mums and dads, whoever's out there. This is my first time on Facebook Live, so yes, I'm a little bit nervous. I guess I'll warm up as I go along. I'm used to seeing my audience, and today I cannot. I'm looking at my phone, and it's very, very different to actually seeing an audience in front of me. So yes, here I am. I'm here to talk to you today about your preteens and your teenagers, and this idea came from a few friends who have been calling me in and saying that my teenager's saying he's bored, or my so-and-so is saying can't eat what she wants to eat, and what should I do? And from there came the idea of a lot of parents must be having similar questions, so this is the time to answer them. So the 5 best questions that get asked today get a copy of my book when we have completed the lockdown. So Priyanka, who's online, will note down the 5 best questions that come along, and and she'll post them for me. So here goes. Everyone who knows Lina Ashar knows that if you ask me to pick between EQ and IQ, I will pick EQ hands down. To me, IQ or content-based knowledge is available on the internet, and it's EQ and the habits of mind that are more important than anything that your kids can learn as far as content is concerned. So, a lot of our kids are sort of having similar experiences. They're having the experience of not being able to eat whatever they want, to order out from Swiggy, Skutsi, and the feeling of being bored. And a lot of our teens are experiencing this because our teens are privileged. Our kids have had what they want with having to do very little to earn it. And so yes, they're used to getting what they want without earning it through their fair share of responsibilities. I've written a lot of parent mentoring articles around why we need to have purposeful parenting rather than survival parenting, and why we actually need our kids to learn to be independent of us. It's what every species on the planet does. When they have their offspring, they first teach them to survive, and only if our kids learn to survive and be independent can they ever hope to self-actualize and thrive in the world. And that is so important for our kids to do should they want to have a fulfilling and happy life. So today I'm going to talk to you about one of the activities of engagement that I asked this parent, a friend of mine, to do with her son, and she messaged me back saying, with a big thumbs up, and saying, all good for now. I think we've managed to crack quite a bit. So this is what I asked her to do. I asked her to watch this amazing TED Talk. It's by a girl called Amy Purdy, and it's called Living Beyond Limits. And she starts her whole story as the soul wanting to be free to travel, free to be independent, and in control of her own life. She also starts her story as a professional snowboarder and a celebrated dancer. She then gets bacterial meningitis, and she loses both her legs, not only both her legs below her knees, but also her kidney, her spleen, and the hearing in her left ear. And she goes into the state of depression and feeling like a victim, as a lot of people would. This is at her lowest low when she asks herself the most important question she can ever ask herself. And that question is, how do you draw inspiration from life's obstacles? This question, in various ways and means, most inspirational people who have actually self-actualized have asked this question to themselves at one point or another, because there's no life without problems. The only problem in life is if we think life is supposed to be without problems. Problems are a part of life, and our kids have to learn that. And what we need to do as parents and well-wishers is to teach our kids to deal with the challenges, the problems that come along, the obstacles, rather than solving it for them. So she asks herself, if I was a book, if my life was a book and I was the author, how would I want my story to go? A very, very important question. And then she realizes she has a choice, as all of us do have a choice, that when life does not give us what we expect, we can take on the avatar of being a victim, and we can choose to suffer, or we can choose to reframe the meaning we give to our stories. At this point, although she does not discuss this in a TED Talk, she, like all of us, when faced with pain or adversity, we actually only have 3 real choices. That we can choose to take on the role of a victim, and we can feel pain, confinement, loss of adventure, etc., whatever she must have felt and whatever a lot of us initially feel when we experience pain or an obstacle. So in this case, if we choose to be a victim, if we choose to feel the pain, we either end up in various stages and states of addiction, including digital distraction, substance abuses, etc., etc. The second choice we all have is to change the situation, which is, if you're in a bad marriage, get out of it. But to change the situation is something she couldn't do because she'd already lost both her legs below her knee. And we cannot do at this time. We cannot change the situation we're finding ourselves in. We are in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, and we have no control over changing the situation. So the only other possibility is to change the meaning of the situation, or to change our thoughts about the situation, to change the story we're telling ourselves about the situation. And this is what Amy Purdy goes on to do. She says to herself that she'll embrace the new me. And with humor, she says, suddenly she realized she could be as short or as tall as she wanted with her artificial legs, depending on who she was dating. She says, when I snowboard, my feet will no longer get cold, and I can alter the size of my feet depending on the shoes that are up for sale. So this is an important question for all of us to ask ourselves, and to ask our children to ask themselves at this time. How can they reframe? How can we reframe the stories we are telling ourselves about what we are experiencing? And if we have any preteens watching, or if we have any parents of preteens who would like help with reframing something that the child is coming to them with, please post your questions, and Priyanka is collating them, and she's going to send them to me on my Australian phone because my Indian phone is what I'm using for this Facebook Live. So after reframing, you can't just reframe and then sit back and do nothing. She does a very important thing, and this is the bottom line of every self-help book out there, of every law of attraction thing that you watch. She sets her intentions and goals for the new her, and she visualizes these as having happened with very strong emotion. There is a very strong science to this. When you do this, it activates what we call the reticular activation system in our brain. And for any parents wanting to know more about this, please follow me on Instagram and write into me. You can write into me at lina@kkel.com, which is lina@kkel.com, or you can post questions on the Billabong Facebook page or any of my social handles, and I'll make sure you get the answers. Activating the reticular activation system is what coaches of all athletes do. It's what neuroscientists tell us activates in the brain, whether we're actually playing the piano or we're imagining with emotion that we're playing a brilliant piece on the piano. We actually activate the same neural connections in our brain. So this is the next thing Amy goes on to do. So what happens to Amy? Armed with this reframing of her state and this visualizing of the new and embracing of the new Amy, she goes on armed with perseverance, a spirit of optimism, resilience, and humor, and she refuses to let adversity stop her in her tracks. Instead, she says she gets creative, which is the number one habit of mind every corporate or anyone in the world out there wants your child to have. What do they want? They want them to be creative problem solvers. So doing all of this, she goes on to finish school and college. She becomes the co-founder of a non-profit organization for youth with disabilities who want to get involved with action sports. And she goes to South Africa where through her creativity, she helps put shoes on thousands of kids' feet so that they can go to school. And there fell my phone. So what does she do? She uses her pain to create her gifts. She uses her pain to create her gifts and contribution and gifts and compassion to the world. So she goes on to win 2 gold medals and becomes the highest ranking snowboarder in the world. Today, she says she would never want to change her story. She'd never want to change what happened to her. And her challenge enabled her rather than disabled her. I'm hoping in the future, all of humanity, your kids and us, will one day say that we would never ever have wanted this time not to happen. That we will enable so much for humanity rather than disabling for humanity, and we choose to think that way, and it's just the optimism is the best way for us to think. So we always have a choice of how we think, and what I ask kids is, you can go and look up the 2 salesmen story. I'm not going to tell it to you, but do you want to be the salesman who goes to Africa and says no opportunity, nobody wears shoes, or do you want to be the salesman who goes to Africa and says fabulous opportunity, nobody wears shoes? Do you want to see an obstacle, or do you want to use your imagination to create new possibilities? So ask your teens what is the story they want to tell themselves about this time. For while we cannot control what's happening to us, we can control the meaning or the story we tell ourselves about what's happening to us. And, we can define this time. It's a choice, and we get to choose how to see this time. I've written an article. I've created podcasts around how I'm choosing to use this time. I've lost 4 kilos. I'm learning something new every day. I'm making sure I'm creative every day, because these are the things that juice me and drive me. I'm also making sure I spend lots of time with my mom and dad, because they're here with me at this time instead of being in Australia. I've got my brother, my son and his fiance at home, and that's what I'm choosing to do. We actually play cards. We gamble every evening. The only difference is the money that we use is going to PM Cares Fund. So we've already raised about 10,000 rupees for the PM Cares Fund, over and above, obviously, what we are donating as a family. So negative self-talk or positive self-talk, it's up to you. And tell your kids it's up to them, because both of these programs, both of these are like programs that we install in our brain. Our computers are like a program, and the thoughts we think is the software that we're feeding our brains, our computer systems with. So choose. The next, so after Amy Purdy and Living Beyond Limits, the next thing I want to talk about is a novel that we actually teach in grade 7. We teach it in IGCSE, and it's called The Noticer. And I bring up this novel. A lot of kids have written to me after doing, the journal, the self-reflection journal, and said, Miss Lina, this book has changed my life forever. And the reason why the book is so great is it actually teaches you to reframe. It gives you a better understanding of life's challenges and how you can take one perspective or another. And it's got very practical yet powerful methods of motivation and encouragement for things that we want to resolve in our life, including relationships or times when we think we've been dealt a bad hand. It's a really great perspective on how people can change their view of the world, their view of the problems, and find inspiration and strength to therefore bring creativity to solving it. One of the most inspirational insights on perspective from the book that I have is a really strong thing of reframing. Is when the mentor asks his mentee a question as they sit on the beach having their lunch. And the mentor asks the mentee, what are you doing? And the mentee says, I'm eating sardines and sausages in the sand. And the mentor, whose name is Jones, says, you know what the difference is? I'm actually dining on surf and turf with an ocean view. And this is the power of reframing. He asks him, what is the difference when you say I'm eating Vienna sausages and sardines in the sand, to when I say I'm dining on surf and turf with an ocean view? It gives both sentences give our brain very, very different messages. So what is the difference when you tell your brain that you're locked down, to when you say, because that's a word associated with confinement and jail, etc., to if you tell your brain, I'm so happy to be safe and secure at home. It's just actually how you choose to see things. With that, I'm going to take some questions. I'm just going to look up my Australian phone as to Priyanka having posted me a question. The first question she's asking from Sakshi Mehta is, how do I get my kids to complete their homework? So one of the things I'd like to encourage at this time because nobody really listens to me otherwise, is that every responsibility you take for your child, he can abdicate for himself. And you know, our kids are too used to an external form of control, and therefore, you know, we need to get our kids to complete their homework. We don't need to get our kids to complete their homework. We actually, if we ask our kids, have you completed your homework? It's a very transactional communication we're having. But what if we said to our kids, is there something I can do to help you complete your homework? It makes our kids think that we're listening, we're present, and we actually care. And we're actually giving them an internal locus of control. This is very, very important for our kids as they, you know, as they go down the line. Another thing I would like to implore for all of you parents, that this is a perfect time to drop the baggage of expectations others have had for you and you have for your child. Today, academic learning is secondary to the powerful lessons this time can teach our kids and us. Our children have the ability to learn about tolerance, resilience, kindness, communication, contribution, you know, helping at home and helping outside of home, being independent, helping themselves through this period, and of course, the most important thing, having that spirit of optimism. So I'm hoping I've answered your question. You're not supposed to get your kids to complete their homework. You're supposed to just ask them, is there something I can do? I wrote some questions you could actually ask your kids. Let me see if I can find them, because I knew this is one that would actually come up. And of course, you can never find something when you want it. So, did you do your homework? Is an external motivator, and it's a very transactional way of talking to your child. And these kids who are constantly doing things to please their mom or their dad are kids who will grow up wanting to please the world all the time and setting aside their own needs for the needs and for the sake of pleasing everyone else. So what I'd like you to do is to transform this into a form of encouragement, which says, you know, what do you need me to do to help you create a space for you to complete your homework, or what do you need? You know, another thing I think we always forget is our kids are very different types of learners, and not every child can sit down and, you know, write or read for an hour at an end. Some of our kids actually need music. If they're auditory, music actually helps them learn, or they need movement. So, you know, after every 10 minutes, they actually need to run around, and this is the perfect time. We can't allow them to run around in the classroom all the time, but you sure can at home. So, Sakshi Mehta, I hope I've answered that question, but it's not up to you to get your kids to complete their homework. Another question from Shilpa K. How do I keep kids away from TV and mobiles these days? Because for working periods as a mom, I guess it's very difficult. Okay, so firstly, is everyone's responsible in the home for keeping the home going. Everyone has to have chores. I have chores in this house because, you know, we've got so many people in the house and not enough help. So I have chores. I give my son chores. My to-be daughter-in-law has chores. My mom's got chores, and my dad's got chores. My mom doesn't have much movement, but she can still sit there and peel peas and shell peas and do whatever else I need her to do. Everyone has to feel like they're contributing at this time. And when kids feel like they're contributing, it's just such a great thing for their feeling of being independent and in control and worthy of belonging to the family. So one is, if everyone has rules around mobiles and television, and that's something you communicate with your kids. Understand preteens and teens have an area of their brain that's striving for independence and self-control. So it's a time when, you know, they will want to assert their independence. So rather than dictate to them how much time they can have on TV and mobiles, if as a family you all sit down and you discuss this and you negotiate this as a family, and the rules apply for everyone in the family, it's absolutely fantastic. And one thing I would really encourage is that meal times are digital free times for everyone at the table. And at this time, there's some great questions you can actually ask your kids. Questions like, what did you feel grateful for today? What did you not feel in control of today? What would you like to do tomorrow? that will, that makes you look forward to waking up tomorrow? Or, so all of these sorts of questions are great opening statements for open-ended statements for everyone to start having conversations around. And what are you most thankful for today? What do you think you had today that somebody living in a village or a child of a migrant worker didn't have today? And what do what negative thought did you have today that you were able to reframe? So all of these things are great. And if you've got very young kids, yes, mobile phones are difficult, but if you've got young kids, the best thing to do is to sort of put everything onto a bigger screen, and that's then, okay for them to have some amount of screen time. If your kids see you use technology as an enabler rather than a distraction, you'll find that your kids do the same. So if you wake up in the morning and you're using your digital device for meditation, for exercise, for podcasts, for music, which releases great amounts of serotonin in the brain. If they see you doing it for everything to enable and empower your life, it's fabulous. If they see you constantly on social media, on Netflix, on chat, then that's because kids will not follow what you say. Kids actually model their behavior from what they see you do. So I'm hoping I've answered your question, Shilpa K. How do we make sure the current circumstances do not scare our kids? At the same time, they understand the seriousness. This is from Shikha Chaudhary. Shikha, if you're a Billabong parent, and even if you're not, if you're a Billabong parent, what we've done is we've actually created awareness journals around COVID-19 because, fear is the biggest disabler. And you can alleviate a lot of fear by being knowledgeable and aware of what's going on. So the first thing is, to stop watching media so much. I cannot say this enough. You choose to watch media. Media is there. Media knows that if it bleeds, it leads. Media is there because it needs your TRPs and your eyeballs. And our brains are wired for fear. And so when you see these big, scary headlines, your brains are actually more attached to what the media is about to say about those scary headlines. And while you still have a prefrontal cortex, of course, you have a lot of stuff that's not happening for you, but while you still have a prefrontal cortex that can filter out what's real and what's not real, your kids don't. So please, guard against the media. There are too many questions that have come in. Guard against the media. And the second thing is make sure your kids are aware of what's going on. That uncertainty is the only certainty in life. And if the kids know what's going on, and if you, as I said, if you're a Billabong parent, you'll get the COVID-19 journal. And if you're not a Billabong parent, please write into us. You can write to lina@kkl.com or founder@kkl.com, or you can post on your school page, and we will make sure you've got the journal. And if you're not a Billabong parent, you can still write into us, and we'll still make sure that you get the journal. Another question from Tyra, who's got her son, and she's our administrator at Santa Cruz. My son says he's bored all the time, and I'm working from home. I don't know how to keep him engaged. So, Tyra, one of the things you need to do is get your kids to just be aware that, kids were locked down when world wars happened, and they were locked down at many other times in history. And our kids have to come from a place of gratitude that they actually have so much more entertainment, so much more learning they can do than anyone in history ever had the opportunity to do. So if you can get him to look back in history and start coming from a place of gratitude, he'll automatically start understanding that, he's not bored. The second thing is, do not alleviate boredom. Parents, do not alleviate boredom for your kids. Boredom is the biggest platform for creativity to happen. It's the biggest ladder of which we bounce off and we get creative. It's the bored brain that is creative. So please allow your kids to get bored. Now another question. What do we tell our kids who want to eat their choice of food at this time? Again, gratitude. look at kids who just don't have food. A story I told my son when, he went to his cousin Anmol Ambani's house, his nephew, my cousin, and he said, Mom, Anmol's bathroom is as big as my bedroom. I literally took him through an exercise where I said, is your bedroom bigger or his best friend's bedroom? And I went all the way down the line to him understanding that there are kids on the street who have no bedroom, and that he's just really, really lucky to have a bedroom. And so again, it's a process of reframing, and if our kids are really young, we have to take them, handhold them through that reframing. What kind of conversation should we have with our teens regarding this lockdown and keep them happy and entertained during this period? A lot will come from you. If you are happy and engaged and making sure you're okay, your kids will be okay as well. If your kids see you stressed and trying to get everything done, this is not a time for perfection. This is not a time for getting everything done. This is actually a time to reframe what getting everything done means, because we can't, and it's a time to embrace our humanness, and our kids will learn from that. If we all of us in the home, and because I do it, my son started doing it. If I have this period, this is my creative period. So when I wake up, I know when I'm most creative, it's like when I've had my tea and my coffee and everything's done, and then I start my creative period. I start doing something that I actually have to submit as creative. Then I go into my learning, because my brain's a little bit less engaged. I go into my learning period. I actually then in the evening spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on Netflix. I mean, it's the time for it, or to read, or anything else. So I think if we all schedule our days for the whole family, that have times of productivity, have times of learning, have times of my goal for myself is very clear. I'm hoping it's the same goal my son has for himself, that I am only asking myself, how am I better today emotionally, physically, spiritually, and cognitively than I was yesterday? And if I get through that day having done a little bit of improvement in each area, I've done a great job. And I think we all have to be kind to ourselves and go through it like that. How to utilize time in the lockdown? Very easy. Prioritize what's important to you. I know that this time is really important to me, for me to be able to lose the weight that I've been wanting to lose for a very long time. So I've done just very, very clear things. When Prime Minister Modi said 21 days lockdown, I said, okay, it takes 21 days to build a new habit. I stopped my wine from day one. I hope none of your teens are listening, but I stopped my wine for 21 days. I started working out for 21 days. I said, if I can just do a little bit of this every day, then these 21 days, I'm going to build really great new habits. Manisha Joshi said Alchemist for grade 8. ICSE is also wonderful. Thank you, Manisha. Yes, it is. As I said, a lot of the learning that we embed in our instructional design is not about what the kids are going to learn in the exams. I just actually wanted to show you, I don't know if you can see this clearly. This is a mind map I made around COVID-19 before I got on the phone with the instructional designers to say, how can we use this time, for learning? How can we teach kids through this that creativity comes from a problem, and to understand that the whole world is getting creative right now, trying to find a solution to COVID-19. To ask them a really important question: why, after billions of years of evolution, haven't germs recognized that to kill their host is to commit suicide? So this is how we actually do. This is the first step we take to building our integrated instructional design. We're looking at geography. How does geography, temperature, density affect the spread of COVID-19? We're looking at math. We're looking at what exponential growth means. We're looking at statistics of decline of pollution, and what happens if you actually if you do social distancing like this, and if you do social distancing like that, what are the difference in the rates of new COVID cases that we have. So the way we do this is, if it's integrated, it's fantastic. We also put humor in there. We've put a lot of Trump and his tweets in there, and the fact that he cannot say origin. He says the oranges of this. So anyway. We've put a lot of humor in there. We put a lot of art in there. We're doing a lot of things. How to encourage a 4-year-old into reading books? Simple. get him to, it's 10 minutes a day. You have a little chart, you tick it off. Before you know it, those 10 minutes will become 15 minutes and 20 minutes. The other important thing I'd like to tell all parents, not all kids will enjoy reading. My younger brother when he was growing up, refused to read anything. He refused to learn anything. He's not a reader. Today, he's an avid learner because he's constantly listening to podcasts. He walks listening to a podcast. He's constantly on podcasts. So I think it's also important to assess whether your child is a auditory, a kinesthetic, or a visual learner, and then and reading is also a learning style. So if reading is not his number one learning style, there are a lot of podcasts, etc. I actually wrote down a few. I just did some homework on teen podcasts because this is supposed to be mainly about teens, and there's one called Unstoppable Teen, Youth Radio, Brain Stuff, The Moth, Mentor for Teens. There's resilience books like The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. There's kindness movies like Wonder. So anything you want to teach a child, whether it's kindness, compassion, contribution, creativity, there'll either be a podcast for it, or there'll be a movie for it, or there'll be a book that you can read for it. So it can be one of many things. The next question I have, 1 minute. How do I make my son develop reading skills? From Ronak Vyas. There's very, very powerful ways. If you can write into us, because it's a very long answer, if you can write into us, we'll actually give you strategies to help your child read. Again, you can either write into founder@kkel.com, Lina, Lina @kkel.com. You can write into your school website, or you can post something on the school website, or this Facebook page, and someone will get back to you with the strategies. Ma'am, can you please suggest, my son gets disappointed if someone is not giving a chance for him to speak and he starts crying? Well, I would too. All kids need to be listened to more than they need to be spoken to. So please, the easiest way is just listen. My 3.5-year-old kid doesn't want to sit for school live sessions. Well, as I'm reading one, the other ones come in and then I lose that one. Hi Lina, my son is in play school year 4 at this stage. Do I expect him to read spelling, or is it just might be as in reading books? Didn't quite understand it, but again, anyone who's a Kangaroo Kids or a Billabong High parent, please do write into us with your questions. We will make sure we answer it. Understand that all kids develop differently. I got my niece to read within a week when she was 4 years old, and I tried that with my nephew, but he did not engage. And I never force anyone to learn, because the minute you force learning onto somebody, it stops becoming a joy and something that you actually want to do. It becomes something that's forced upon you. So my 4-year-old nephew, who I could not engage to learn reading, if I send you a video of how he plays piano, it's amazing. So every child will develop different strengths and at different times. We're actually creating brand new Kangaroo Kids curriculum, and the focus is not on what the kids can't do, it's on what they can do. And I heard a very insightful question, that why is it that when parents come to PTMs, a teacher is likely to say, your child doesn't know how to do this math, he needs to spend more time on it. Why don't we say, your child is such a stunning dancer, she needs to spend more time dancing? Why do we focus on what kids can't do? We should actually just focus on what kids are good at and embrace that and make sure that they have plenty of opportunity to do that. Good evening. I'm a dance facilitator and want to know, what do you expect from us at this point of time to get the better learning for students? Go live on dance. I'm doing a program called Walk at Home, and it's working great for me. I've also signed on for a dance app. What you can even do is you can tape yourselves and speak through it and send them out to the kids, and the kids will learn. Unnati, who also works with us, says, how do I get my daughter to concentrate on one activity? She gets bored in 5 minutes with each activity. Unnati, that's not true. If what you posted on our leadership group is to be believed, your daughter is fabulous and she is concentrating. Kids will not concentrate if they're not enjoying the activity. If they're enjoying the activity, and what I'm seeing from the videos our leaders are posting to us, our kids are having a fabulous time. If they and sometimes, look, this is a challenging time for us all, mentally, emotionally, in every way. If your child is young, she doesn't understand why she can't go to school. No matter what you say to her, she's still going to feel like, why can't I get to school? Why can't I play with my friends? This is a time for you to just be present and be. And if she's bored in 5 minutes, let her not do it for that day. This is not the time to make sure everything gets done. This is the time for us to, embrace each other and make sure that we get through this emotionally resilient, mentally okay, and all of that. Children are more interested in online games and tend to do nothing other than playing them after their classes. Thus, their talent is being unused. However, they don't tend to understand that they can do more things than online gaming. How to make them understand, especially when he's a teen. Speak to his values. Every child does something properly if you actually speak to their values. If your child is a teenager, if you ask your child how he sees his life when he's an adult. And I did this actually at Billabong, Santa Cruz with a teenager who was about to sit for his board exams, intelligent, but his mom said, was on the phone. And I actually just sat with him and I did a values exercise, which is, what do you value and what do you want to be, or how do you see yourself when you're at this age, and what do you see yourself doing? And this kid said, I see myself doing social marketing and doing this and that. And I said to his mom, look, this is the real reason why he's actually on the phone. A lot of him being on the phone is actually looking at what people are posting in terms of social media marketing. But I said to him, okay, for you to get into, do you want to get into college? And he said, yes. I said, do you know where you want to get into? He said, yes. I said, well, what do you need to get in? And he said, such and such. I said, well, what you're doing right now, is it going to get you there? He said, no. I said, so what's getting in your way? He said, I get very distracted with my phone. I said, well, what happens if you gave your mom the phone? He said, I don't want my mom to read my messages, etc. I said, well, can you think of a solution? And he actually came up with a solution. He said, I'll get a lockbox. I'll put my phone in the lockbox at 8 o'clock. And then the lockbox goes to my mom with my phone inside, so I can't get distracted. I'm actually serving myself and empowering myself not to get distracted, and the next morning I'll go and get my phone. I said, will that work for you? Yes. Are you committing to it? Yes. Do you want to commit to it? Yes. Because if kids know where they want to go, and if they themselves commit to that, then they will follow through, because that's intrinsic. That comes from inside. It comes from within. The problem in our world, especially in India, is everything is stringent. You must do this so you can get into college. You must do this so you can get a good job. You must do this. It's our expectations that we're expecting our kids to live up to. Let them create their own expectations for themselves and then see how they live up to them. Then they will. Okay, I'm going to take one or two last questions. This was supposed to be 20 minutes. It's my first. I'm hoping I'm doing okay because it's actually my first Facebook Live. I feel, Miss Lina, that today's parents get scared when the child says they are bored rather than getting scared and worked up. I feel we need to divert their attention. As you mentioned, teach them to be grateful, make a timetable and let them do what they want to do. I'm sure they will not keep saying, I am bored. Yes, Jegna, you are so right. That is correct. It's the perfect way to deal with boredom. And do not take responsibility for your kids' boredom. Let them take responsibility for themselves and understand all the greatest thoughts, all the greatest minds came from when we were bored. If you go and look up during the Spanish flu, what kind of inventions and innovations came up, you'll be amazed. Okay, then there's I've suggested the podcast. Hi ma'am, my son Ursulan from Billabong hardly listens to us and makes things very difficult for us to handle. like too much stubbornness. That's a very vague question for me to answer or to me to respond to. If you can give me a specific example. The first thing is when we actually do allow our kids to be in control of their destiny, they will not be stubborn. They're stubborn because you're exerting control. There's a physics concept which says force creates resistance. So if you force your kids to do anything, they're going to resist it. So it's at this time, at their brain's development state, it's a time for negotiation. And remember that when you negotiate, you have to give and take. I always say, don't negotiate or don't come down too hard on things that are okay. I'll give you an example. Say, for instance, when my mother-in-law and I have my son, I was very sure on where I would put my foot down, and I was very sure where I would let go. So things that were not important to me, I'd let go. If she tell me, fish needs to be brought up like this, I'd let it go because it wasn't important to me. But so choose your battles with your teenagers and with your mother-in-laws. Jagpreet Singh says, hello ma'am, my son is in grade 1. Even after knowing about everything, he hesitates to speak or do that particular thing. He lacks in confidence. Even though he knows well, what do you do to motivate him? Nothing. Pooja Bedi's daughter went to Billabong, Juhu, and her daughter Alia, or she likes to be called Alaya now, who is now an actress, never spoke. She did not speak, and her mother was so scared. And I said, leave her be. She will get there. Not only did she learn to speak, but she has the confidence to be in front of a camera. So it's all a question of time and development. So with that, I'm going to end my first live Facebook. Please like it and share it, and please do follow me on Instagram. That would be fabulous if you do. And I look forward to coming on for the next one, and please do join me next time I'm here. Bye bye.